Hello, welcome to the Pint Party podcast, where our part is pish, but our pints aren't. To introduce ourselves, I'm Caden, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dino.
Hi, hello, and welcome to this very special episode. We are quite deep into Spooktober, so this is the Halloween episode. We have a very special guest known as James, aka OneLonelyFajita. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good, thank you. How are you all getting on?
Very good.
Excuse me.
So the main topic. Caden, would you like to...
The main topic is Halloween, horror, ghost stories, and tales. Any of which could be all examples, but I think to start us off will be James.
Tradition.
It's got to be the guest.
The guest appearance. Okay, no bother. So I'll start you off. Hit the ground running. This is a ghost story / tale, which I can't remember exactly when, but I must have been about 13, 14 when I first heard it, or even a little bit younger. But it's stuck with me all these years because I feel like it's just that bit of, it's not too cheesy a story. It's it's quite good. So I'll jump right in.
Nice one.
So, once upon a time, there was this little boy called Johnny. Whenever he was naughty or did something that his father disapproved of, his father would take his axe and chop off a little bit of Johnny's fingers, one by one, whittling them down, to teach Johnny a lesson about behavior. So Johnny, knowing what his father would do if he ever disappointed him, tried all his best to make his father happy. One day, Johnny's father asks the little boy if he would go into town and pick up some liver for their dinner, because they were having a sort of special occasion. And this was Johnny took it upon himself that this was a big task, and he really wanted to prove to his father that he was well behaved. So off he goes down into town, and on his way there, he passes by a football pitch. All his friends are there, laughing, giggling, kicking the ball about, just having a great time. Johnny starts to pass by them. One of them shouts over, "Johnny, do you want to come and join us?" Johnny, thinking against all that his father is trying to teach him, caves in and joins his friends for some football. Many hours pass. They're laughing and giggling. As they're packing up, Johnny suddenly realizes the time, races off into town, and the butcher's is closed. Fearful for what's about to happen to him, he's walking slowly back to his house. Nervous, scared, worried for every bit of his fingers. As he's passing by a field, he notices some sheep, and he thinks, maybe if I take one of them, and I'll take its liver, and then my dad will not know the difference. As he's humming and hawing to himself, he hears an almighty scream. As he looks over, the farmer has fallen underneath some sort of machinery. Johnny races over to try and help, but as he does, the farmer breathes his last breath. Johnny, almost in tears, looks down and sees that his guts have been exposed, and yes, a juicy looking prime liver
Ooh.
is sticking out of the farmer's abdomen. Johnny, thinking selfishly of his own fingers, rips it out of the farmer's chest or abdomen and runs off home to present it to his father. His father, thinking it's quite a strange looking liver, appreciates that Johnny did what he was told, and he cooks it up and they have it for dinner. Later that night, however, Johnny is lying in bed, just drifting off, but still wrestling with the horrible thoughts of what he has done to preserve his own being. He's just drifting off, and he hears very quietly, "Johnny, I want my liver back." At first he thought it was his own imagination, but it's there again. "Johnny, I want my liver back." As Johnny starts to bolt upright in bed, looking out the window, there's nothing there. "Johnny, I want my liver back." He's panicking, starting to sweat, thinking, "Oh no, 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 this can't be, this can't be." "Johnny, I'm coming up the stairs. Johnny, I'm just outside your door. Johnny, you're dead!" In the morning, the father goes into Johnny's bedroom to find the corpse of his little boy with a perfect hole of where his liver once was.
Oh boy.
There you go.
Oh my.
So what does that teach you, ladies and gentlemen?
Oh boy. Don't don't take man's liver.
don't take
Oh
man's
my
liver.
Oh.
That story has it changed slightly over the years, but
Yeah.
it's essentially that's it. It's better in person because I'll tell you very briefly. When I think I was at a scout camp when I was a wee lad, and we were telling this story, and there were some bunk beds in the bedroom that we're in. I was on the top bunk, and there was some kid just sitting below me on the bottom, and my cousin is sitting across the room telling the story, and just at the "Johnny, you're dead," I reached down and grabbed this guy's shoulders, and he crapped himself. Like, it was so
Truly.
like, it was ridiculous. So we got him good. Yeah, that was there you go.
Quite a good one.
Liver.
That's a
Not
good
sheep
one.
liver.
Wonder why
Represented.
the friends didn't ask about his fingers. What's that? What's that?
What's that? Oh, it's nothing. It's nothing. It's my fingers. So I was born. So yeah, there you go.
That's a good one to start us off.
Alright.
Who will go next? Me or you, kid?
Yeah, you.
Me. Okay, doc. Well, I'll crack my tinny now. I almost forgot. So that's it there. And so the first thing I'm going to mention, first thing I'm going to talk about here, it's the legend of Stingy Jack.
Ooh.
Okay, and it's an old Irish myth where, according to the story, Stingy Jack invited the devil to have a drink with him.
Oh.
Don't know how he got his number, you know.
I was about to say
Just dialed
just get bored one
666.
day.
Yeah. But he invited the devil to have a drink with him, and true to his name, Stingy Jack didn't want to pay for his drink.
Oh.
So he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin so that Jack could use it to buy their drinks.
Oof.
Once the devil did so, Jack decided to keep the money and put it into his pocket, right next to a silver cross. The silver cross prevented the devil from changing back into his original form. But Jack eventually freed the devil under the one condition that he would not bother Jack for 1 year, and that should Jack die, he would not claim his soul.
Oh.
The next year, Jack again tricked the devil into climbing into a tree to pick a piece of fruit. While the devil was up in the tree, Jack carved a sign into the tree of a cross, so that the devil could not come down until the devil promised Jack not to bother him for 10 more years. Soon after Jack died, as the legend goes, God would not allow such an unsavoury figure into heaven. And the devil, upset by the trick Jack had played on him, kept his word and would not claim his soul. He sent Jack off into the dark night with only a burning coal to light his way. Jack put the coal into a carved out turnip and has been roaming the earth ever since. And it's this carved out turnip that spawned the jack-o'-lantern.
Yes, that's right.
Thought that was a nice wee tale. The origin to the jack-o'-lantern.
The origin of the jack-o'-lantern.
Mm.
That's pretty cool. I've seen some photos of turnip jack-o'-lanterns. They're exponentially more creepy than pumpkin jack-o'-lanterns. That's for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it was originally turnips, and then over the years just went to pumpkins. But that's the first we saw. It's quite tame compared to my other two, I will say.
Oh, okay.
So
okay.
it gets a bit more horror.
I see.
Yeah.
Suppose I'll tell my first example. Is a short story, Monkey's Paw. Is a short story I read in school, and I quite enjoyed it because it had this like dreariness, especially during the end of it, like sort of like something you have to imagine what it would be like, because it doesn't really like tell you. So it goes like this, where the White family, like sort of the protagonists of the short story, a wife, a father, and a son, and they acquire this monkey's paw that has the ability to grant you 3 wishes with the 3 fingers it has up, and they bartered it off a sergeant, I believe, but he warned them that it was a very dangerous thing and to be wary of its conditions and wishes. And what the father does is first wishes for £200, in which the monkey's paw's finger goes down, with only 2 remaining. And within the coming weeks, or days rather, nothing happens until his son died in a work accident at a factory, a refinery. And he's compensated that way through £200 through the work insurance. So we discover that there's a consequence to this wish. And then the second wish, made by the mother, is to bring back their son. But here's the catch, is during the night of that wish, you hear creaking and footsteps from outside. Their gate opens, someone walks up to their door. The mother knows it's the son. The father is currently thinking over, what could this be? Could it be the corpse? Could it be something disgusting? Because it's been this body's been mauled. It's been like deceased for quite a few days, a few weeks. And before the mother could even open the door, because she's really short, she had to put up a chair to the door to unlock the door. The father makes the third wish to make the second wish never come true. Hence, all 3 wishes are done, and all that's left is the first wish's monetary gain and their son dead. We never get to see the son for the door. We imagine that it would be rotting. It's got like this dreadful smell, but we never see it. It's never described what it'd be like. It's just left to your imagination, and why that all actions have consequences if you're not careful. I think it's just a really neat short story.
Yeah.
That's my
creepy.
first example.
Oof. Oh boy.
Back to me now. Ooh.
Back to you, James.
All right. So this one's quite a short one, but I hope you're ready. I don't want to sound mean, but the dead are pretty clueless. I've always seen them. When I was younger, everyone thought I was just talking to imaginary friends. After a couple of years, when I overheard my parents talk about calling a psychologist, I realized what I was talking to. See, ghosts don't tend to realize they're dead, and they don't look like in the movies. They look just like us. I'm pretty smart for a 13-year-old boy, so I started noticing certain patterns to tell them apart from the living. They could be a bit distant from living people, or you'd see them try to talk to people who wouldn't even notice them. Some of them could tell I was different, that I noticed them. Like this guy I saw after school yesterday. I'm a big boy now, see? I don't need my parents to pick me up. Home is just a short walk away. He was standing away from the other parents, didn't talk to them, just stared at me. That's how I knew he was one of the ghosts. I went over, told him I knew what he was, and asked how I could help him. I don't remember much after that. I think because of what happened this morning. Downstairs, my parents were crying. I tried to talk to them, but they ignored me. They must have died last night somehow. Sometimes the new ghosts wouldn't talk to me. Some police officers and reporters just arrived. They won't talk to me either. Just my parents. It's weird. I've never seen so many ghosts together before. Why won't anyone talk to me? There you go.
Oh my.
Oh man.
Dun dun dun.
That was good.
Ah,
Short and
indeed.
sweet.
Short,
Yeah.
but creepy.
Oh, wow. That rolls around to me.
Yes.
So this one is called Don't Look Back. Now, the start of this is there's a girl and her boyfriend are in a car at this makeout point, right?
Ooh.
And they've got the radio on, and the news comes on it, and they hear that there's a killer on the loose who's escaped. So, in hearing the news, they get quite scared, and they're like, right, okay, we need to go, we need to get out of here. So the guy tries to start the car, but it's not working. The car's buggered. So he says to her, and he turns to her and he says, right, I'll go out, and I'll try and get some help. And if you stay in the back of the car, under a blanket, under a cover, and wait there, I'll lock the doors. When I come back, I will knock 3 times so that you know it's me. So she's scared, but she's like, okay, I'll do it. So she gets behind into the back of the car. Doors are locked, and some time passes, and she's waiting there. She's like, God, hurry up. And next minute, she hears a knock. She waits. She hears a second knock, and then she waits more. She hears a third knock, and just as she's about to come out from under the cover, she hears a fourth knock. So she doesn't move. She stays there, completely still. Another 10 or 15 minutes pass, and then all of a sudden, there's tons of knocking constantly on the car. But it's the police, and like, it's okay, we're here, you're fine. So she comes out from under the cover, and as they're taking her out the car and they're going towards the police car, the policeman says, "Don't look back." And what do you do, of course? She turns around, only to see her boyfriend hanging from the tree. And it turns out that the knocking she was hearing was his feet hitting against the car.
Oh my god.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool.
That's my second.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Don't look back.
It's those sort of stories that always make you see, like in movies, and you see like, oh, the movie begins of these teens in a car, and you're like, oh no, something's happening.
Yeah.
That was good.
That was good, yeah.
Well,
When the first time I heard that, I was like, oof.
Oh, that's creepy.
it is. Well, my second one is from a story that was released in 1820 about the legend of Sleepy Hollow. And it spawned a famous character, Ichabod Crane, who inspired the likes of characters like Scarecrow from Batman and all that sort of stuff. But the story goes, Ichabod Crane is a teacher, a school teacher, and he's not making much money, so he also has music lessons on the side for the village of Sleepy Hollow. It's not a big village. It's in New York, but it's like a fairly new New York. And he makes acquaintance with a girl called Katrina, in which he really likes, getting to know her better and flirting with her and speaking with her, gaining a very romantic interest. He finds out somebody else who is also interested in her, called Brom, and he's like a big brute, sort of like the Gaston from Beauty and the Beast. But basically, he's known as the prankster, and he's really good at horseback riding. And how it goes is we learn that Sleepy Hollow has always been acquainted with spirits and the supernatural phenomena. They're not that fazed by it, but alas, Ichabod Crane is still new to this town, this village. So he's invited to this party that Katrina is hosting, so he goes to it. But to his disappointment, when he reaches the church, that she's not there. So he decides to leave. But on his way back by the bridge on his horse, he sees behind him a person on another horse. Somebody who doesn't quite have their head. Their head, though, is on their lap. And the horse starts... No, the Headless Horseman's horse starts chasing Ichabod, and he starts shitting himself, basically. And he starts going across the bridge, and he just leaves. Like, this is such an event that it's just like, oh, I can't take this. So he leaves the village. Nobody hears anything of him again until his story is released from other places that he's told it. And the deal is, we never know whether it's Brom, who is a good horseback rider, and a prankster that fabricated maybe a body full of straw to go on the back of this horse, or whether it was truly the Headless Horseman, the spirit of the Headless Horseman that was chasing him or not, on this foggy night.
Imagine being that prankster, like, haha. That would be so creepy.
I think Brom ended up with Katrina as well, so that only just evidenced it being like maybe he just wanted to scare the shit out of Ichabod.
Mm-hmm. But from that is the Headless Horseman. That's cool. Ooh. Oh, that's cool.
Wow. Have you got one more, James?
Yes, this one is not so much a tale, but a rather strange, unsolved series of murders.
Ooh.
The bloody Villisca Axe Murders. Now, at the end of a quiet street in Villisca, Iowa, there sits an old white frame house. Up the street, there are a group of churches, and a few blocks away is a park that faces a middle school. The old white house looks like many of the others that fill the neighborhood, but unlike them, it lies abandoned. The house emits no light or sound, and upon closer inspection, the doors are found to be tightly boarded up. A small sign out front reads, Villisca Axe Murder House. On June 10th, 1912, my cat's just jumping around like crazy. He's too scared. On June 10th, 1912, the Moore family was sleeping peacefully in their beds. Joe and Sarah, I think Moores or Moore. Joe and Sarah Moore were asleep upstairs, while their 4 children were resting in a room down the hall. In a guest room on the first floor were 2 girls, the Stillinger sisters, who had come for a sleepover. Shortly after midnight, a stranger entered through the unlocked door, which is not it's not an uncommon sight in what was considered a small, safe, and friendly town. And this stranger plucked an oil lamp from a nearby table, rigging it to burn so low it supplied light for barely 1 person. On one hand, the stranger held the lamp, lighting the way through the house. In his other, he held an axe. Ignoring the sleeping girls downstairs, the stranger made his way up the stairs, guided by the lamp and a seemingly unerring knowledge of the home's layout. Unerring. He crept past the room with the children and into Mr. and Mrs. Moore's bedroom. Then he made his way to the children's room and finally back down to the bedroom downstairs. As quickly and as silently as he arrived, the stranger left, taking keys from the home and locking the door behind him. The next morning, the neighbors became suspicious, noticing that the usually rambunctious home was dead quiet. They alerted Joe's brother, who arrived to take a look. What he saw after letting himself in with his own key was enough to make him sick. Everyone in the house was dead, all 8 of them bludgeoned beyond recognition. The police determined that the Moore parents had been murdered first, and with obvious force. The axe that had been used to kill them had been swung so high above the murderer's head that it had gouged the ceiling above the bed. Joe alone had been hit with the axe at least 30 times. The faces of both parents, as well as the children, had been reduced to nothing but a bloody pulp. The state of the bodies wasn't the most concerning part, however, once the police had searched the home. After murdering the Moores, the killer had apparently set up some kind of ritual. He had covered the Moore parents' heads with sheets and the Moore children's faces with clothing. He then went through each room in the house, covering all of the mirrors and windows with cloths and towels. At some point, he took a 2-pound piece of uncooked bacon from the fridge and placed it in the living room, along with a keychain. A bowl of water was found in the home, spirals of blood swirling through it. Police believed that the murderer had washed his hands in it before leaving. By the time the police, the coroner, and the minister and several doctors had thoroughly perused the crime scene, word of the vicious crime had spread, and the crowd outside the home had grown. Officials cautioned the townspeople against going inside, but as soon as the premises was clear, at least 100 townspeople gave in to their gross fascinations and traipsed through the blood-splattered home. One of the townspeople even took a fragment of Joe's skull as a keepsake. As for the perpetrator of the Villisca Axe Murders, the police had shockingly few leads. A few half-hearted efforts to search the town and surrounding countryside were made, though most officials believed that with the roughly 5-hour head start the killer had, he would be long gone. This murder remains unsolved to this day.
Jeez, oh.
I mean, what a creep, right?
Yeah, jeez, oh. Goddamn.
Like, it's so, like, so strange what the person did after doing everything. It's so weird, but yeah.
A single slice of bacon.
Yeah, like
Christ.
the hunk of bacon, like what? But yeah. It's remains. There's some more information on it, but essentially, yeah, it's just the weirdness of it is that, and the little ritual is just such a strange Manny. Anyway,
Very strange.
That's a really good. That's a really good one.
Definitely.
Spectacular.
and then that one townsperson who's like, I'm going to take a bit of skull. Yum. As a keepsake. Anyway, Dylan.
Yeah. Back to me. This is my last one, and I won't tell you the name of it until after. Just so I don't give anything away, right?
Okay.
And I've heard a couple different variations of this one. So the one I'll tell is going to be a bit different to what you might find online and whatnot. But here we go. So, a young girl is home alone for the first time with her only dog as a companion. Her parents are away for the night, had a wee trip, and they won't be back till the next day. So she's listening to the news, and she hears that a killer's on the loose in her neighbourhood. Terrified, she locks all the doors and windows, but she forgets about the basement window and it is left unlocked. She goes to bed, taking her dog to her room with her, and lets the dog sleep under her bed for safety. Now, she wakes up in the middle of the night to hear a dripping sound coming from the bedroom. The bathroom. The dripping noise frightens her, and she thinks, I should get up and tighten that tap. But she's too scared to get out of bed. For reassurance, she reaches her hand down towards the floor, but only for the dog to reassure her and lick her on the hand. So she thinks, okay, I'm fine. I'll go back to sleep. And so she does. She wakes up the next morning and she thinks, right, I'm gonna go to the bathroom for a drink of water and sort out that tap. Only for her to find her dead, mutilated dog hanging in the shower, with his blood slowly dripping onto the tiles. On the shower wall, written in the dog's blood, are the words, "Humans can lick too."
Dun, dun, dun.
Ooh. Yeah, the name of that one is "Humans Can Lick Too," or the licked hand.
That one's fucky.
Oh boy, yeah. That would. I think there's a couple different variations of this story, and then there's, I think, something similar happened to this other guy. Much the same, went to put his hand out, but then got a look and thought, that's fine. It's just the dog.
The dog. I don't think any of mine are like super gory. When I look at them, I think mine's just like fuck with you mentally. To be fair, I suppose if you got licked in the hand and you find your dog mutilated in the bathroom, you're gonna get fucked mentally anyway.
That's gonna fuck you for a long time.
Well, my last one is about I think it's another short story, but it's a story nevertheless by a German author. He made a story called The Metamorphosis. Don't know if you've heard of it, but
I don't think so.
It's about a family salesman who takes care of his family, basically. He's the crux for the finances of his family. The Sam's a family. And he finds himself waking up in his bed one day, suddenly turned into an insect. I think a cockroach specifically. So he's like metamorphosized into this creature, this huge bug. And I believe his mother comes in, is shocked, runs away, but somehow the family learns to tolerate this new form of his. But for months and months he stays in his room. But so they find out that they just cannot financially help keep him anymore, or they can't financially keep after themselves because he was the crux. They at the beginning of his metamorphosis, the sister would feed him food and try and give him milk, but he would not drink the milk, but he would eat the food. After a while, he wouldn't eat the food and would only eat like fermented or rotten food scraps until eventually he wouldn't eat at all. Well, I said eventually already, but after a while, they decided to rent out their place to have people stay. So sort of like a bed and breakfast sort of deal. But after many a nights, they discovered Gregor Samsa, who is the metamorphosized creature, and they said, "No, we're not paying the rent. We're leaving." Eventually, they discuss on the night that this happened that they're gonna have to get rid of Gregor one way or another, and they're all feeling sad they have to do this, but it's a burden they have to release. Gregor overhears this from his family and understands very well, and then suddenly he just dies on that night. No particular reason is given to how he dies or why he dies, but he does. And his family find him and are pleased, in a really weird, gruesome way, pleased that he's died, and they move elsewhere and live in a much more happy circumstance. So, what this story alludes to is sometimes, in a very, really weird manner, that you might have family members that burden you, and you'll never find true peace, or you'll never know how to relax or be financially safe until that family member's dead. That is a really morbid way to look at things, to be honest. A bad way. But it's a way that some people do look at family members who are ill or sick. I don't necessarily think that's a good thing. But it's definitely a story's been made to show the metaphor of that case.
Oh.
That is quite interesting, yeah. That's makes you think.
Yeah.
All right, back to me. Yes.
Yeah, that's
On to
the next topic. Favorite monsters.
favorite monsters. I've updated my list in the time that I sent it. I'll just type that in chat. So yeah, I'll just start this off simple. Very popular monster, especially in the last year. I think is when it was. Yeah, it was this year. Nemesis from the Resident Evil series and Resident Evil remake. So yeah, the creature of Nemesis. I don't know how much you want me to go into this, but
as much as
essentially, Resident Evil in general, bringing in zombies, either latching onto or kickstarting a whole new wave of horror. I'm trying to think of the word. Horror genre and just divulging people's fears and fantasies of horror creatures with these zombies, and then they bring out Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, which was a smarter, more powerful creature who was almost impervious to damage and would just come after whoever its target was. And the first meeting of Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, you're just getting into it. A team member of yours, Brad, runs up to you. He's heavily wounded. He's like, no, because Jill is the main protagonist there. Runs up to you, and then this hulking creature jumps down in front of Brad and just destroys Brad right there on the spot. And you're now thinking, great, I've got to go against this horrible creature. And then through several sections of this game, he'll dive at you when you're least expecting it. The game music is quiet. There's nothing else going on. You're kind of just getting on with what you think you're meant to be doing, and then he just bursts through a window, and you shit your pants. And he just will not stop coming after you until you finally destroy him. And then they remade Resident Evil 3, and he's incredibly fast, incredibly powerful, and he's just a brute of a beast to go against. And yeah, he's much more capable. He's clever as a creature, and he looks ugly as all hell.
Yeah, I'm seeing photos of him, and he looks just mad.
Oh yeah.
It's one of a lot of memes.
Yeah, the remake definitely spawned. The remake design definitely spawned some memes and whatnot. But the original one, when if you put yourself in someone's shoes about your age, but say you've just played through Resident Evil 1 and 2, you're now playing 3, you are now faced with this disgusting, incredibly intelligent and strong creature. You're like, oh my god. And yeah, he's a very popular creature in in monster history. Yeah. I don't know if you want me to continue talking about it, or we can
I think that's
jump to done. Yeah,
I think that's a good one. Yeah, I think you do get quite a lot of games that have that like brute like character.
Yeah,
that enemy that's always just absorbs a lot, super strong.
Yeah.
And I think the first monster I will mention is one of that nature, and it's from a game that I haven't played too much. I definitely do need to play it a lot more, and there's quite a few of them. It's from Doom, and it's the Baron of Hell. Barons of Hell. Now, these Barons of Hell are designed in like the image of the devil, right? And they're huge, absolutely strong, and I think it's one of the most strong enemies you can face in Doom. And yeah, there's not too much to speak about it. Have you seen?
I'm just looking at some pictures just now. They do look pretty rough. In the image of Satan.
Oh man.
Yeah. I just find that enemy to be just really, really cool.
Oh yeah,
just
I can imagine if you've never faced him before and you're just
you'll shit yourself.
This beast of a creature comes at you. You're like, oh god.
Just absorbs rocket launcher ammo.
Oh yeah.
But that's my first.
Nice
one. Yeah, no, that's definitely an interesting creature.
Yeah,
Baron of Hell. Nice.
Well, my first one is a recurring enemy in the Half-Life series. It's the Headcrabs, and I think they're my favourite monster from the games. And there's a lot of them as well. But generally, I just found out here that they're generally the size of a pumpkin.
Oh, relevant.
So, relevant, yes. But I always found them unique in terms of like making people zombies, because they are like an individual creature. They have the jumping power of 10 feet, so they can just latch onto your head and turn you into a zombie. But you have the standard head crab, which just makes you a standard zombie. You just hobble about, you go sort of noise. You've got the fast head crabs, which obviously makes you fast. But I feel like the armored head crabs, they're just big hulking ones as well. They take a lot of damage, much like your first example. But I just, it's one of the few monsters in which I actually want to get a plushie for. A wee plushie head crab. And
that would be cute and terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes. Maybe we should dress up as a head crab. Just have a head crab as a head crab zombie.
Loaded.
I've just seen a very basic description of what a headcrab does, and having attached itself to the human's head, the headcrab will use its powerful beak as well as its neurotoxin to break through the skull and reach the brain. This kills the human.
Yep,
Yep.
Jeez.
he did.
Creepy,
he did.
creepy creature. I think I've tried a tiny bit of Half-Life, and this is when I was younger, they were very like creepy because they just dive at you, jump like full like in front of your face, and you're like, oh my god. So yeah, very creepy creature.
It's very much of a you fucker sort of moment every time they come.
Pretty much, yes. All right, my next creature, monster, such like, is Gremlins. Now, I can't really remember exactly when I first saw Gremlins, but the premise of it is really quite interesting. Because if you haven't seen it, essentially Gremlins are this strange creature from a far off land, and they're I think it was Christmas time or this kid's birthday. The kid's dad went to part of Chinatown or somewhere in America. I think it was New York, and he comes across this cute, very cute creature, and he goes, "Oh, this will be perfect for my son," because the dad, being a workaholic, hadn't got his son anything. So he thinks, "Yes, great, I'll get this, and it'll be cute, and it'll be amazing, and my son will love it." And as he's making the exchange, first of all, the shop owner is very adamant he doesn't want to sell this creature because the owner knows the truth behind it. But the father is quite adamant himself. No, no, no. He takes out his wallet. He's quite flush. He goes, "I will pay whatever it is. I need to get my son this cute wee beast." The owner eventually gives in on the condition of 3 rules. Do not expose to bright lights. Do not let them get wet. And no feeding after midnight. Very simple rules, if you think about it, for the type of creature it is. The gremlin that the dad buys, I think it's must be just less than a foot tall. So it's a very cuddly little teddy bear kind of creature. And he goes home, takes this thing home. The son absolutely loves it, smitten with it. And the dad, obviously remembering, yep, you have 3 rules: don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. So yeah, the kid is like, "Oh, this is amazing." He then soon discovers why there are 3 rules in the first place. The do not get wet is the gremlins reproduce basically if they get wet. It's quite strange. He spills a cup of water over. He's now called the gremlin Gizmo, which is quite a cute name. He spills a cup of water over Gizmo by accident, but then I think this is correct. It triggers some sort of mating behavior, and the gremlin just starts bursting out fluff balls from it, and these fluff balls become more gremlins, all very cute. The do not feed after midnight, however, is where shit gets real. One of the new fluff balls, you can tell straight away, is a bad kitty. It's quite intelligent, knows exactly what it wants to do. So it tricks the kid into feeding them after midnight, and then that's where it goes bad. Once you feed a gremlin after midnight, it morphs into this scaly, about 2 foot tall, now it doubles in size almost, hideous creature with razor sharp claws and razor sharp teeth, and just all hell breaks loose. And yeah, these creatures, I think there was only was there 2 films? Gremlins 2?
I think there
Yes,
was
there were
yeah.
2 films, yes. So
Classic.
I think they ended it quite well because it spawned a fascinating pop culture cult following, and to go from that such cute, cuddly creature to you just fed it after midnight. Nope, bad idea. It's now going to kill you. So yeah, so that's it. It's just it's quite
Gremlins.
an interesting far off land creature to go
Yeah,
from cute cuddly to the scaly beast.
definitely.
And
The 80s was that?
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty sure Furby's just designed.
Yeah, I
after
think
Gizmo.
Furby is definitely very similar to the basic, the fluffy version of the Gremlin. 1984 was
they were creepy in themselves.
Furbies. I
Partly
should have put
because of that
Furbies
film.
on my monster list.
People have been making long Furbies recently. Creepy as shit.
Oh no.
Jeez. Fucking hell.
Anywho.
Mm.
I'm just looking at long Furbies. That's creepy. Dylan, what is your second creature?
Me. Well, my
What?
second creature is from the popular show Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the ever creepy Weeping Angels. Now, these are, I say, fairly modern, considering the show's been going for over 50 years. I think they first appeared in a David Tennant episode.
Yeah.
And the premise of these creatures, these monsters, is that they take the form of like a statue, and if anyone's looking at it, it can't move. Absolutely can't move. But the second you blink, it uses that time. It's really, really fast, so it will use that time to move and try and kill you. The other thing about Weeping Angels as well is that they can't look at each other. Otherwise, if they do, they're trapped. They can't move at all. Which I think that's used as a technique in maybe the second appearance or so.
Mm-hmm.
A Matt Smith episode anyway. But
Isn't that like when he uses the TARDIS to go to go away?
Yes,
and they're all
that's
around
that's the scene. But God, I mind seeing the episodes way back, and I was like, oh man, this is some spooky stuff. If you were to ever be in a situation like that, just not being able to blink, otherwise it just zooms, just full sends at you. And I think in the very first episode, it was a case of if it does touch you, the first episode it was if it touched you, then you would get sent back in time.
Oh.
Or at least the characters in that episode did. And it was far enough back in time so that by the time you get to a really old age and you're about to die, it's when you had been touched or before you were born or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't quite remember exactly.
Because I mind the Doctor met with an older guy, and it turned out to be one of the victims.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he'd been touched, and then he was now back to the time when he got touched, but older, or whatever. That's weird.
But
that would be creepy.
So it's a very good episode.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, one of the
very good episode. And what was I going to say? In other cases, it will snap your neck, just straight up, dead.
You're not worthy of our powers.
Pretty terrifying.
It's like Endermen are like the opposite. You look at them, you're fucked.
Yeah. Definitely creepy. Definitely a cool idea. Definitely a cool monster.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, My second one is the xenomorph from or xenomorphs from Alien and
yes.
the other movies, and I feel it's best suited as a monster from the first movie. Not to say the second movie isn't good, very different film, but in Alien you'll find yourself on a ship full of crewmates, and we discover that extraterrestrial, or rather just a normal creature, seeing as you're in space now, has invaded the ship, one being a xenomorph. And throughout the film, we find out more and more about what it can do and how dangerous it is, as it's able to sense you. It's able to kill you easily with its like tail. It can impale you. It can hunt you very well. I think it has acid blood, so even if you do manage to like harm it, it will like just bleed all over you and kill you that way. And it has used its own blood as a way to like get through to other locations. Like if there's a door in its way, it'll just cut itself and then leak its blood all over the door to get through. It normally travels through vents, and throughout the film, it kills the crewmates one by one until Ridley is one of the last ones left. I believe her name is, and it ends with like a wee exosuit battle with the alien. Or is that the second one? I can't mind. I think it's the flamethrower in the first one. But
I think, yeah.
I think the thing that makes the xenomorph so scary is, which is another part of it, because the original design of it had it being white and you could see its eyes.
Oof.
But they decided to go with painting the entire suit black and making sure you can't see the eyes, because not being able to tell what it's like, if it's looking at you or not, is the more terrifying thing. And it being pure black makes it much tougher to see, and more scarier when you can see it.
Yeah.
I just really appreciate that. A lot of my examples have creatures that have variations as well. So you've got like a xenomorph that's a dog. You've got like Kryptonian xenomorphs. It's a lot of bizarre, wacky variations depending what the. I think the facehuggers, in which if you are like let's say Superman and you get a facehugger attached to you and a chest burster comes out, that xenomorph will take on the genetics of that Kryptonian and it'll be a Kryptonian xenomorph.
Oh my
Much
god!
the same
I
like.
had no idea there's a Kryptonian xenomorph. That's crazy.
Yeah. So like I think in Alien 4 or 3, a facehugger just takes on a dog and it chest bursts the dog and it's just a wee dog alien that chases it. I think the whole point of that ones is they're a bit faster. But they're just very dangerous, and that's I think the original xenomorphs look nothing like the current ones either. Hence the whole genetic evolution. Because I think Prometheus goes over that a bit. So it has a lot of lore to them.
Yeah, they are some creepy creatures, to be fair.
You got the Queen. Big Queen. Bye. I think xenomorphs are neat.
Yeah, they are indeed.
Well, Jams.
Yes, my third and last monster is, in broad terms, the vampire, and slightly not so broad terms, Dracula, and the origin of such, or the origin of thinking of that kind of monster, is Vlad the Impaler. The real life Dracula, as some will say. Now, I've read some cool things about Vlad the Impaler. One thing that if I can, I'll try and find that, but I've got some info here. So basically, Vlad the Impaler, or vampires themselves, are, I don't exactly know the first use of vampire, but to be so ferocious like the Vlad was, and he to be like what he was, there is definitely a lot of well, this was 1400s 1500s, so you know, anyone could make a story about anything. You could point to a woman and call her a witch and then she get lynched. You know, this was the era of your mind is running wild about supernatural shit. So Vlad the Third, or Vlad the Impaler as he later became to known, he was born in 1431, which is now present-day Romania. So that's also why when you think of vampires, you'll often think of Romania. Sadly for him, his father and brother were both killed. When Vlad was being held hostage for 5 years, yep, that's right. When was this? He was about 11 years old. He accompanied his father and his 7-year-old brother on a diplomatic mission to the heart of the Ottoman Empire. The three of them were captured and held hostage by the Ottoman diplomats. Their captors told Vlad II, so Vlad the Impaler's dad, that he could be released on condition that his 2 sons remain. Believing it was the safest option for his family, Vlad II agreed, possibly thinking, right, if my sons remain, I'll go home, I'll sort out an army or some form of diplomat, piece of shenanigans, we can sort this out. The boys were held in a citadel atop a rocky precipice over the town of, I can't even pronounce that, in present-day Turkey. During the 5 years of captivity, so Vlad was 11 when he got captured, or 10, 11. So he was now going into mid to late, or mid-teens when he was released. While they were captured, they were taught lessons in the art of war, science, and philosophy. So, I mean, these captors didn't really do them bad. They still taught them stuff. But they also state that they were subject to torture and beatings, so that's kind of not good.
Yeah.
And it was through this time that Vlad the Impaler developed his hatred of the Ottomans. I mean, I would hold resentment as well. Upon Vlad's father's return, Vlad II was overthrown in a coup orchestrated by local warlords known as the Boyar, or Boyar. He was killed in the marshes behind his house whilst his oldest son was tortured, blinded, and buried alive. So his family is currently not going through a very good time. So I'm not quite sure how they negotiated the release, but later on in his life, he was freed shortly after his father and brother died. He'd already developed a taste for violence. To consolidate power and assert his dominance, he decided to hold a banquet and invite hundreds of members of his rival families. My computer's trying to restart. No, not right now. So he invited hundreds of members of his rival families because he wanted to assert his power and dominance. Knowing his authority would be challenged, he had his guests stabbed and their still twitching bodies impaled on spikes, which became his favorite and preferred form of torture. Now, through his life and through his bloody reign, he basically, the connotations and everyone's minds running wild about the viciousness of Vlad. I'm not too sure about the blood drinking, but essentially the viciousness led to the inspiration. It's believed that Bram Stoker based the title character Dracula on Vlad the Impaler. However, the two have little in common because they're like I said, there wasn't too much about blood drinking. But essentially, Vlad the Impaler, being a horrific leader and torturer, became the inspiration for vampires.
Yeah, interesting.
I could be very wrong on all of my info, but
Aye.
Essentially, yes, he's definitely played a bit of a part in modern day vampires.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
Very much, yeah.
So is that back to me for my last then?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, my last favourite monster comes from one of my favourite games of all time, Borderlands 2, and it's the final boss, actually. It comes right at the end of the story, and it's the warrior. Now, the most of the story for this is like you're trying to stop Handsome Jack from opening this vault, taking the loot, and then taking control of the vault monster who protects it. So he's after this the warrior, so they can just hold a lot of power and just take over. That's his main goal. So right at the end, it comes to that point where he's opened the vault, and out comes the warrior. And the warrior, by the way, like design-wise, is incredibly stunning. It's huge, absolutely huge, dragon-like creature, which is, it looks quite rocky and like quite filled with lava and whatnot. Just because it glows like that orange.
Mhm.
I'll send you a photo. Caden, you obviously know very much.
Yeah.
I don't know if James has finished Borderlands 2.
I was
but
muted. I know I finished Borderlands 1. I got part of the way through Borderlands 2, so I never finished the Handsome Jack stuff.
the final boss is just really, really nice. And it's obviously, with Borderlands being quite like the looter shooter, a lot of the bosses you can farm, and it's a really satisfying one to farm as well. Like the whole area in which it takes place, in his chest is where his crit spots are. You sort of like burst that open.
He does look
while you're fighting.
pretty cool design. Like he's just made of stone, but then he's got like the glowy lava bits. And, yeah, that's pretty cool.
It is definitely. I think out of the whole series, his favorite enemy, favorite boss. Just unbelievably cool. But yeah, that be it.
Nice one. Yeah, I will have to finish Borderlands 2 at some point.
oh, definitely. Definitely.
Well,
your last one, kid.
Yes, my last one is from the titular movie Tremors, having the monsters known as graboids. Don't know if any of you have watched Tremors.
It's on my to watch list.
Oh my! Well, I'll briefly describe what it is. Not go into too much detail. It's essentially this sort of monster that causes tremors in this town, and they're like, oh, what are these earthquakes? What's going on? And it turns out it's like Toph from Avatar: The Last Airbender. They use sound waves to sense where people are going and stuff. And if you step on the ground, sort of like a sandy area, they'll collapse the ground beneath you and eat you whole, essentially.
Jesus.
And it's that sort of aspect of these creatures. It's really interesting to try and survive, and how you watch the humans trying to get used to the tactics that these creatures use and what they might like have else up their sleeves, essentially. And I don't know if you know what they look like, but they're essentially like these big worm sort of shaped, and they've got like they're like beakish mouth, but the bottom part of their mouth is like 3 segments of like a beak, and it sort of like opens up, and it's just, I think it's a really good design. Very, very, very creepy.
They sound like that would be creepy, because you'd just be like walking along all fine and dandy, and then suddenly dead.
I think they're big enough to just make a truck go underneath background.
Oh my god! So you can even like drive away.
God.
I think there's like 4 films of it, like Tremors.
Mm.
But it's a very good film. I know Kenneth would very much recommend it. I also recommend watching it. It's a really good film. And that finishes up my favourite monsters.
Yeah,
Nice.
that
was
finishes up on the whole favourite monsters in total, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, on to the next topic, which is creepypastas.
Creepypasta.
Mm.
Anybody
Now,
know why they're called creepypastas?
no, I don't actually.
Because I don't.
Oh,
Nah.
okay. I thought you were going to tell us.
I thought
Nice
you were
bit of
gonna
info. Yeah, but no. No, I can't remember exactly when I was introduced to creepypastas, but I was definitely a wee lad, that's for sure.
Mm.
And I didn't get too much into it, but some of them that I read, I definitely was freaked out for a good while. I think either a couple of the topics you two are going to talk about, or some of the ones that I read as a wee bairn.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely freaked out. So
Aye.
So I'll start with
Start us off, James.
Candle Cove. This is an exchange between some people on a message board or such like emails. That's what it is. So the first email is it okay? It's between a few people. So essentially, this one person goes, "Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. The reply: It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland, and I was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove, was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Yes! Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls. Real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF, though. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple of months in 71, not 72, and I was 12, and I watched it a few times with my brother. My mum would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily, and there was calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name, Janice or Jade or something. I think it was Janice. Thank you. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock in Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face with the lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden / plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Ha, I remember now too. Do you remember this part? You have to go inside. Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was, and the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside! With his 2 eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. Ugh, it just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when the show was on. Nightmare fuel. That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette, the Skin Taker. Can't believe what they let us watch back then.
Jeez.
Jesus H. Christ, the Skin Taker? What kind of kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings, just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape, and his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ almighty! Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl, but at the camera and said, "To grind your skin." I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically and just all screaming and screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she'd been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. No,
Jeez.
not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place, crying and screaming for the whole show. Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God, I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Oh God, yes, the little girl Janice. I remember seeing her shaking and the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth, his jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched it. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s when I was 8 or 9 and if she remembered a kids show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that and asked why, and she said, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm going to go watch Candle Cove now, Mum.' And then you would tune to the TV static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show."
Oh, Jesus Christ. Fuck.
That's creepy.
Yeah, definitely is.
Oh,
Oof.
So yeah, that's quite interesting. The collective memory of the children's show.
Aye.
Yeah, they just watched TV static. Oh.
Fuck.
Anyway, Dylan.
Yeah, this is me. I think that's definitely what creepypastas are good at doing, is living up to its name of being creepy.
Oh, for sure.
And I'm gonna mention Slender Man here,
Yeah.
which I think it's probably one of the most famous creepypastas.
it did
Mhm.
spawn a game, didn't it?
Yeah, it certainly blew up during when the game came out, which I think was 2012, and tons of like YouTubers were jumping on this and playing it.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And yeah, I enjoyed playing it as well. And God, it was quite a fairly scary game to start with. Obviously, if you kept playing it, it'd begin to be, you'd just get used to it. But yeah, the Slender Man. So the thing with Slender Man is his, like, the way he looks. It's a very tall man who's faceless, completely faceless. His face is pure white. No hair, no hat, I don't think. And he's in a suit. This, like, black suit. And there's been many, many photos in which you can see these, like, tentacles between, like, say, 4 and 8 tentacles coming out of his back, like, reaching over. And yeah, there's a lot of photos which are said to be from like 1980s or this time and that time, and he's just hidden there in the background, just standing there. And the thing about Slender Man is his main like target is children. I'm pretty sure. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's children that he mainly goes after. And yeah, it's seeing these photos is really just, oof, oh my, he's just hidden there. Some of them are a lot more obvious. Some of them are more hidden. But yeah, the it said that when he's tracking prey, he will stretch his arms, his limbs out, in like just massively, to just strike fear into everyone, and he doesn't leave any evidence behind. He kidnaps them and whatnot. I think the origin for Slenderman started in 2009, and it was from a forum in which they were asking. It was like one of those Photoshop contest type things, where they were asking people to just make some paranormal images, and so that's what spawned Slenderman. Someone made this picture which had him behind kids in a park, standing there menacingly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Slenderman is definitely one that I came across when I was just discovering creepypasta, and for a good must have been a couple months or a few months, I was like looking into Slenderman and creeped out, and because it was so well done as well. It was so well put together, and I think I mentioned this to you, Dylan. A friend of mine at the time, because we both came across it, or like we both started talking to each other about it. And then my friend came across this YouTube series called Marble Hornets, where it's like a guy's taking the creepypasta to the next level, and he's documenting his interactions with Slenderman, and it's just creepy.
Oh man, I have a feeling I might have seen that back in the day, but I can't quite remember. There's a film that came out based on it, 2018. That was. I still haven't seen it. I haven't checked it out. I think there's bad reviews, quite possibly. But alas, it's something I might check out at some point when I get time. Because it's kind of interesting. Just the idea. Did either of you play the game?
I've played it a couple of times, yeah.
I played the Gary's mod version.
Oh wow.
Okay.
I don't think I've ever played the original. Something I've seen a lot
of. What's yours? Your creepypasta?
Mine is of the Russian sleeping experiment, and it's one of the first creepypastas I ever read, and that was one I was really infatuated with. I read a lot, and the basis of it is this Soviet facility has a wee laboratory going on doing tests in the 1940s, and one of the tests they've got set up is to have 4 subjects in a room with a gas being pumped into the room to prevent the subjects from being able to sleep. So what goes on is these subjects, after 3 days, are pretty normal. They're just chatting away until one of them just starts screaming, just absolutely bawling their eyes out, screaming, until eventually their vocal cords just break. They can no longer make any noise. More days go by, and then some more peculiar stuff goes on, like the subjects start sticking pieces of paper to the windows of the room they're in, so the researchers can't see it. The papers were also stuck to the walls using their feces, so it was a bit disgusting. So more days went by where the researchers couldn't go look in to know what was happening, so they used the intercom to speak to them, and eventually they had to see if they were alive, but the response they got was of one subject expressing compliance, On the 15th day, the researchers decided to turn off the stimulating gas that makes them not sleep and reopen the chamber. The subjects, after being subjected to this for so long, were just did not want the gas to be turned off for fear they would fall asleep. Upon looking inside, they discover that the 4 surviving subjects had performed lethal and severe mutilation and disembowelment on themselves during the past days, including tearing off flesh and muscles, removing multiple abdominal internal organs, practicing self-cannibalism, allowing 4 inches of blood and water to accumulate on the floor by jamming pieces of flesh from the first subject into the drain, who was found dead on the floor as soon as the chamber was opened. The one who had their vocal cords snapped, basically. And upon entering the room, a soldier was coming in to accompany these subjects, but they murdered the soldier and severely injuring another one. After eventually being removed from the chamber, all subjects were shown to exhibit extreme strength, unprecedented resistance to drugs and sedatives, and the ability to remain alive despite lethal injuries, and had a desperate desire to stay awake. It was also found that if any one of the subjects fell asleep, they would die. And after being treated for their severe injuries, the general of the whole thing that ordered them to go back into the chambers, but have the researchers go in with them instead of just leaving it to the windows, because they would probably do the same thing again, putting it up on the walls with feces and all that. So one of the researchers that goes in with them decides, kills the general with a bullet. He has a gun. Kills 2 of the other subjects, because there's only 3 left now, because the 4th one was found lying dead at the drain. The 3rd one, the only surviving one, had terrified the researcher that he would rather not allow himself to be locked in a room with monsters that could no longer be called people. He asked what the subject was, because how could they have such strength? How are they still alive, basically? The subject had smiled and identified himself and the other fallen subjects as inherent evil inside the human mind that is kept in check by the act of sleeping. After a brief pause, the researcher shot the prisoner in the heart, and with his dying breath on the floor, the subject muttered his final words, "So nearly free."
Ugh.
The picture that goes along with the creepypasta is also terrifying.
Oh, I've seen it. It's
Yeah,
creepy. Lives up to the name of creepy.
exactly. Yeah, I've heard this before and it fucking spooked me. It's like, oh my.
Yep, I've got a bit of a short one, but it's definitely one that I read several years ago, and I've seen it pop up every now and again because it's short, but it's quite good. So, you just put it in the chat. Oh, that's creepy. No, let's just get rid of that. Nope,
No, Jesus. Fuck. Can I scroll away from that?
Yeah, I just scrolled up as well. That's just
Nope.
So, there was a hunter in the woods who, after a long day of hunting, was in the middle of an immense forest. It was getting dark, and having lost his bearings, he decided to head in one direction until he was clear of the increasingly oppressive foliage. After what seemed like hours, he came across a cabin in a small clearing. Realizing how dark it had grown, he decided to see if he could stay for the night there, and he'd make his way home in the morning. He approached and found the door ajar. Nobody was inside. The hunter flopped down on a single bed, deciding to explain himself to the owner in the morning, or if they came back in the middle of the night, he would explain that he'd gotten lost. As he looked around, he was surprised to see the walls adorned by many portraits, all painted in incredible detail. Without exception, they appeared to be staring down at him, their features twisted into looks of hatred. Staring back, he grew increasingly uncomfortable, making a concerted effort to ignore the many hateful faces. He turned to face the wall, and, exhausted, he fell into a restless sleep. Face down in an unfamiliar bed, he turned, blinking in unexpected sunlight. Looking up, he discovered that the cabin had no portraits, only windows.
Mm.
Ooh.
Oh.
Ooh. Damn.
Where I was living as a kid, we lived like right next to the woods as well. So I for a good while afterwards, I was like,
Oh,
fuck.
fuck.
So I made sure
I
to
can
close
just
all
imagine.
my curtains. The first sign of darkness, I was like, right, everything's getting closed. I'm not looking out. Nope. I was definitely freaked out as a kid by that. Definitely unsettled me. Yeah.
Oof. Well, it's back to me. And yeah, Slenderman was the first one that I read into after its popularity, and after that is when I did like a bit of digging into a few different creepypastas, because I was quite interested. And one of the other ones that I remember, and I've done a small bit of looking into it after for this, it's The Rake. Now I'll put the photo in here for you to see.
Bob's worst enemy.
Anyone listening can just search it up themselves. Like any images we're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Rake, man. There's one main photo of it that's just it
Mr. Burns.
oozes creepiness, and its looks give off like this like completely naked bald human / dog. It's very thin, and the name comes from its long rake-like claws that's on its hands. And yeah, I think the origin of the story, I don't know how it like actually came to part. But the origin of the story is like during the summer of 2003, events in like the north of America involving like a strange human-like creature sparked like media interest, and then there was this blackout, and all the information that there was about this got destroyed. There was nothing, just all gone, vanished. But yeah, then there was this group of people who were like trying to find anything they could on this creature, and there's a couple here that I've got, and the earliest one that these guys found was from 1691, and it says it's from a mariner's log. It says, "He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the Rake." That's the first one. There's one from 1964, which is a suicide note. And this one says, "As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have introduced through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I awoke and felt his presence. Once I awoke and saw his form. Once again I awoke and heard his voice and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what might next awake to experience. I cannot ever wake. Goodbye." Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and there was one loose personal letter with no envelope, which said, "Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name." And yeah, there's a few different things like that, a few different stories that they've said as like And one of the main things that reoccurs with all of these is that he's like at the end of your bed. He sort of sits and he watches you, and if you see him, if you see his like, I think it's black beady eyes, then he just installs like this sheer fear into you, which drives you insane. Yeah, that's the premise of the rake. I'm pretty sure the rake is meant to be a very fast creature as well. Right, I'm not entirely sure about that. But yeah, that's the rake.
The
That's pretty cool. Like with the letters. Oh, that's
There's a couple more, but it would take ages to run over them all.
Oh yeah.
So it's definitely one of those things. If you're interested in, then have a look into it. Anywho, next one.
Well, my second one is one I stole. It's the Lavender Town Syndrome from the Pokemon games,
yeah.
the original ones, like the very original ones. So
Another popular.
yeah, it's the premise of it is you at one point in Pokemon Red or Blue, you get to a certain part of the region, and it's called the wee town's called Lavender Town, and when you get into it, the OST or soundtrack, it changes to this very high pitched, creepy, like tune. The basis of the town, I believe, is there's a huge tower and it's got a lot of graves through the different floors, and what is said in this creepypasta is that the tune is responsible for hundreds, like I think at least 200 suicide and illness related deaths in Japanese children that had played the game. And they found the relation to be very odd. So, in other versions of the game released, they had changed the frequency of Lavender Town's tune to be lower. And we discover that a lot of the deaths, suicides, and that start stopping. There's none occur anymore, really. And it's just a really odd telling of how that the suicides get either by hanging or jumping out buildings, and it's always these children that had these games, and you'd go into the saves, and one of the last places or the part of the story they've been to is past or during Lavender Town. And what's really interesting about that is if you listen to the tune as well, it's incredibly creepy. I think it's a banger now myself.
Yeah, it is.
I used to be freaked out by it,
a
but I
banger.
thought it was I think it's a banger.
Oof.
But when I was younger, I was definitely oh no, oh no.
I'll tell you a small wee story regarding the Lavender Town song. So yeah, like this is one of the other ones that I'd read about before, and there was a time when it was me and 3 other mates. We were at one of theirs houses, right, and we were there for ages. Like got there quite late in the night and stayed overnight essentially. And 2 of them ended up falling asleep and going to bed, and it was just me and this other mate who were sitting on the computer. And this is like 6 a.m. We're talking, like we stayed up for ages, and they've just killed. And what we did, we were like, fuck it, we'll just walk home and get to our own beds, you know. But before we left, we stuck the Lavender Town song, the Lavender Town theme, on the computer, the 10-hour version. We just stuck it on and left it at a fairly low volume, and then disappeared into the night.
No.
So they woke up just like, what the fuck? What's happening?
What the fuck?
But yeah, I thought it was quite funny.
No, I can just imagine like waking up and being like, "Yo."
It's just going through your head.
Apart from creepypastas, there's also the Lavender Town theory of when you're fighting your rival, and he doesn't have his Raticate on his team anymore. And it's apparently because you killed it in your last battle. That's why he's at the gravestone.
Yeah, that's what it was. Because you were on the ferry or something like that.
Yeah.
You ran into him and you fought, and then you beat him, and he can't get off the ferry or something. It's too busy. So the theory is he couldn't get to a poke center in time, so the Raticate died, and he was in Lavender Town burying it, which is sad as all hell. But yeah.
Like, it isn't even like beyond belief because a lot of the Pokédex entries for Pokemon are insane. Like Drifloon's one where it will carry children away if the child doesn't if it doesn't wail to its death essentially. It's savage. Aye, back on topic. Aye.
Back on topic, right? Back to me. Yeah, cool. So I've got one here. I just got rid of it. Hold on. Oh my god, come back. So this one, I'll. No. I'll just. All right. You ever see someone die on camera? A snuff film is a recording of the actual murder of human being that is subsequently passed around for entertainment purposes. Suicides and accidents don't count. According to the MPAA, the FCC, and the FBI, and the ever-loving Snopes.com, there's no such thing as a snuff film. Yes, this includes the popular, if you'll have heard of it, Faces of Death. Anything you think might count is faked, falsified, or not made for that purpose, such as those tasteless videos you find on shock sites. This is a lie. There are, as best as anyone can tell, between 30 to 40 snuff films, true snuff films, floating around out there. The earliest is a silent film on decaying nitrate celluloid film, simply titled La Mort d'une Fille, and bears the date of 1896. The latest, judging by the hairstyle and the presence of a Frankie Says Relax t-shirt, was probably made in 1983 or 1984 and is on a Betamax. The films vary in violence, but they all include seemingly ritualized sex, followed by the slaying of a girl with dirty blonde hair and piercing blue eyes who appears to be around 19 years old. Every film has the same exact girl. Dun, dun, dun.
Jesus.
Just has a lot of identical siblings.
Yeah.
That's... Oh my. Oh my.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a short one, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Short but creepy.
So I will say my last.
Oh, hey guys, did I tell you I'm making a short film project? Would you like to be a part of it?
Oh no my.
Oh no.
God.
Oh
Please. No. No.
No.
Not today.
Anyway.
No thank you.
No thank you.
Yeah. My last one I'm going to mention is probably one of the ones that I've looked into the least, but it's still kind of interesting, nevertheless. It is Smile Dog. And yeah, this is one it's kind of new to me. And I don't. It's another one where I don't quite know the actual origins, but according to the creepypasta fandom wiki that they've got, the story is it consists of a classic horror setup. An amateur writer visits the house of a lady who supposedly has a story for which he can borrow from. Rather than speak, however, the lady has locked herself up in her room, crying and ranting about nightmares and visions and various other problems. All of these centre around a floppy disk that she has given him that contain the image smile.jpg, which is the smile dog. Viewing the image incites insanity, and no copy of the exact image exists on the web, although there are similars with likeness of it. They're floating about, and I've sent you one of those into the chat. The image alone, like that one, just oof.
That's just creepy in its own
It
right.
is full on creepy.
You could just have that on creepypasta, and that would be perfect.
Yeah. So yeah. That's the main thing about it. I don't know too much else in terms of like other stories that people might have or whatnot, but that's the basis of it, and just the image alone is enough for me, to be honest.
It's much like Jeff the Killer. That's another one that's like purely just an image that would be like, ugh, he has no nose.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of not copy pastas. Actually, speaking of copy pastas, that's where creepypasta comes from. Just copy and paste.
Ah,
So
right.
it's just creepypasta instead.
Yes, because I've heard the term copypasta before, but that's when it's like something meme is going around,
Yeah.
and you're spreading it. So there's a copypasta, but so creepypasta is creepy tales, copy and paste, and you can just share them around. And
Yeah.
yeah, Jeff the Killer is kind of creepy as well. So yeah.
Aye. Now that
It's
you've
like
mentioned it.
all creepypastas are just 100 times creepier if it has an image to go along with the story.
Oh, for sure. Because then it's like, oh shit, there's evidence.
Oh no. The Photoshop kid is out of class again.
Yeah, talking about copy pastas. You got the one of the ones that I find hilarious. You see on now and again is like what the fuck did you just say about me, you little bitch? I'll have you know I graduated top of my class in Navy
Navy
SEAls.
Oh my
SEALs.
god.
Yeah.
I have 42 confirmed sniper kills.
Oh my god.
It just goes on.
Yep.
It's funny. Yeah.
Or if you don't share this to 4 of your friends, you will die at 9 o'clock tonight.
Oh my
Oh
god.
my Christ.
And you
Those
see, and you actually see some of your friends and family sharing it, and you're like, no, stop. It's not real.
Yes.
It's a sham.
Oh god.
Well,
Caden, yes, your one.
I'll mention my last one is it's from a game, Minecraft, and it's Herobrine, or Herobrine, or however you would say it. And what basically happens in this creepypasta is a guy logs into a newly created world. He's going about his day, making his wee house, making a crafting table. He explains that his computer can't handle long distance for his world, so he sets his block distance seeing view to low, so his computer can run well. And when it's at that distance, the surrounding area looks a lot like just fog. So he's okay with that, and it's a bit creepy. But he notices during this world that there's a figure that's running about, and he's like, "Oh, it must be a cow." He goes chasing after it for a while, until it turns around and it's actually a character, or rather player model. But the difference being it has hollowed out eyes. They're completely white, and it just disappears. He doesn't know where it goes because it goes in past his distancing view. As time goes on, he starts noticing weird things like pyramids in the ocean, sort of like trees in different biomes having no leaves. So like he's discovering these like weird man-made structures. Eventually, he goes on a forum asking about. It's like, have you guys seen this guy cutting about as well? Do you think it's a player just hacking into people's like worlds and stuff and just making man-made structures? And people are like, oh yeah, that's Herobrine going about. And they did tell him on the forum that Herobrine's apparently Notch's brother, which is the creator of the game Minecraft. Notch, that is. And eventually, the guy who keeps on finding Herobrine about sends off an email to Notch himself saying, "Oh, you have a brother called Herobrine, do you? Do you know that he's cutting about in not? Well, I don't know if you mentioned he's cutting about in worlds doing stuff, but he says, do you know what your brother's doing and all that? Is this your brother?" And he gets an email back from Notch himself, and it merely says, "Oh, I did have a brother, and that was his name, but he's no longer with us."
Oof.
And that's how it goes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And it's
see. Oh,
and
yeah.
it's one of those creepypastas that's actually affected the lore of the game and now exists.
It really has, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think one of my
Yeah.
I like
favorite
that one.
one of my favorite
no.
mods with it is there's a mod you can add on to Minecraft where you have a stick that if you right click with it, it will spawn in a random thing, and in that random generator, Herobrine's in it, and
Oh, my
you can
God.
accidentally spawn him, and he'll just annihilate everything below you, like 400 blocks below you, and
Oh
just
my
in
God.
your area,
Jesus.
and it's genuinely scary as fuck. I'll send a clip into the Discord later of it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, man.
it's the whole idea of it's creepy. A lot of like videos respawn off it as well, like people like playing the game, like a guy in a mine shaft turning around, and you just see Herobrine at the end of the mine shaft.
Mm-hmm.
You can just barely see him. Just spooky.
Oh man.
I knew a little bit about Herobrine, but I didn't know about the brother and
Mhm.
stuff. So that's great.
Yeah. Oh man.
Oh, man.
I'll say I mind back in the days when Minecraft came out and the Xbox 360. Me and one of my mates had this world that we would always go on.
Mhm.
And they brought out like updates where they added more skins and stuff, and they added like host cheats and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the skins they added was Herobrine. So I decided, because I was kind of interested in all the creepypastas, I decided to. We were both working on different things. He was working on one side of like this map area, on one thing. I was the other side, and I would when it gets kind of quiet and we're just working away, I changed skin to Herobrine. I turned off name tag, and I flew across the map near him, and I would like hide kind of far away, but enough so that he can see, like near a cave. And I just remember him spotting me and like start running over, and I would go into the cave, go invisible, and fly all the way back to where I was. And then just turn on my name tag and change skin again. It's like, he's like, "Here, was that you?" I was like, "What? What do you mean?" I'm just building this, just building my thing over here. Couldn't possibly be me.
Oh, you totally tricked
Yeah,
it.
that was good.
That's good. Yeah.
Good fun.
Jesus.
It's funny.
But yeah, creepypastas. Does that finish it?
Oh my. Moves us on to the final topic, I believe, of
Final topic.
serial killers.
Now,
Take it away, Penny.
how much information are you wanting about this?
What do you want to give?
Yeah. As
Okay.
much as you
I'll,
deem necessary.
It's your time. We don't mind.
Okay. Well, I'll start with very popular Jeffrey Dahmer. Convicted serial killer and sex offender. Jeffrey Dahmer, over the course of 13 years, he sought out men, mostly African American, at gay bars, malls, and bus stops, and lured them home with promises of money or sex in turn for doing something, or just getting a bit jiggy, and gave them alcohol laced with drugs before strangling them to death. At first, Jeffrey would, when he was a young lad, I believe I can't remember exactly what his father did, but oh no, here we go. Yeah, we'll go into there before I get into that, because it's a bit creepy. But anyway, he was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to Lionel and Joyce Dahmer. He was described as an energetic and happy child until the age of 4, when surgery to correct a double hernia seemed to effect a change in the boy. Noticeably subdued, he became increasingly withdrawn following the birth of his younger brother and the family's frequent moves. By his early teens, he was disengaged, tense, and largely friendless. So he's already starting off on a bad note. Dahmer claims that his compulsions towards necrophilia and murder began around the age of 14. But it appears that the breakdown of his parents' marriage and their acrimonious divorce a few years later may have been the catalyst for turning these thoughts into actions. So yeah, this boy at 14 was going through some shit, and he found an unhealthy outlet, and it manifested and evolved into what he became. By the time of his first killing, Dahmer's alcohol consumption had spun out of control. He would frequently show up to school absolutely blutered, because he just enjoyed getting drunk. And this was like 14, 15, 16-year-old. He would just be on it, like really unhealthily. He dropped out of Ohio State University after 1 quarter term, and his recently remarried father insisted that he join the army. That way he could get over his alcohol dependence and become, hopefully the army would be able to set him straight, as it were, and give him morals and all that good stuff. So where is it? He enlisted in late December 1978 and was posted to Germany shortly thereafter. However, his drinking problem persisted, and in early 81, so 3 hours after joining, the army discharged him. Although German authorities would later investigate possible connections between Dahmer and murders that took place in the area during that time, it is not believed that he took any more victims while serving in the armed forces. So, following his discharge, Dahmer returned home to Ohio, feeling like really shit about himself, because it was his dad who suggested, go to the army, they'll set you straight, and now he's been discharged and he's just feeling like shit. He was arrested later in 1981 for disorderly conduct, and this prompted his father to send Dahmer to live with his grandmother in Wisconsin. Now, he got on quite well with his grandmother. She was actually one person who treated him really well, like genuinely enjoyed his company, and they could talk about a lot of stuff. So he had a really good relationship with his grandmother. However, his alcohol problem continued, and he was arrested the following summer for indecent exposure. He was arrested again in 1986 when 2 boys accused him of masturbating in front of them. He received a 1-year probationary sentence. So his early life was already pretty fucked. When he was a kid, I can't remember what his father did, but his dad knew about body parts, about preserving bones and such like. So when he was a kid, I think this is correct. He killed some animals, or he found some roadkill and some stuff like that. And so his obsession with death started very early in his life. And at one point, he wanted to preserve some bones. I believe. And so he asked his dad the best methods for this. His dad, thinking, oh, this is fantastic. He's taking an interest. I think he was a chemist. So his dad was thinking, this is amazing. My shy boy is now taking an interest in what I do. Yeah. So he taught him like best methods for preserving bones and taking flesh off of bones and stuff like that. So his dad unknowingly taught him skills that he would use later in life, which is creepy as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dahmer, he was careful to select his victims on the fringes of society, so he wouldn't who were often borderline criminal, making their disappearances less noticeable and reducing the likelihood of his capture. So he would pick his victims who were already doing kind of dodgy stuff. So if anybody in the area knew of these victims, they'd think they just got, picked up by the police or whatever, pinched. So he lured them to his home with promises of money or sex, then strangled them to death, and then he engaged in sex acts with their body and kept body parts and photos as souvenirs. At first, though, he discovered that he was gay and he tried to have normal relationships, but it was when he was getting jiggy with other men and the other men were like moving around and talking, Dahmer was like, no, shut up, don't move, don't do this. So he ended up drugging them so they'd be unconscious and then doing whatever he wanted with them. And then that's when he was like, yes, I prefer this, I have the control, I have the power. So this boy had a shit start to life and he just evolved from there, and eventually he dismembered the corpse of his first victim, packed the body parts into plastic bags, and buried them behind his parents' home. He later got them out of the ground, crushed their bones with a sledgehammer, and scattered them across a wooded ravine. His killings and early life is just messed up. He was an alcoholic, he had a shit start to life, and it just didn't go good from there. And all in all, he murdered 17 men, and he kept victims' body parts as souvenirs. And lovely fella. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
There's some more crazy shit about him, but
like the sex slave.
Say that again.
The sex slave thing, where he attempted to make sex slaves through drilling into their heads.
Oh yeah. So that's what I was meaning. There's more to it. So essentially, he I'll go into that a little bit. I don't really know I can't remember the thinking behind it, but he wanted someone, because he enjoyed people who didn't move during sex, and he didn't want to just drug them. He wanted to make someone into a sex slave, but keep them alive. So he drugged someone, tried to drill with a power drill through their skull into their brain, and he had this acid of some sort that he would just pour through the hole into their brain, hoping to make them submissive, make them lobotomized, essentially. And just use them for his own gain. It didn't work out too well for him. He tried it on the first guy, and I think he just ended up dying. And he tried again on another guy, and the guy woke up while he was drilling a hole, and so he kind of escaped and got. I think it was a hotel they were in, or like a block of flats or something. So the guy escaped, sat on the curb outside the hotel, and two women came up to him like, "Oh my God, are you all right?" Because they could see he had a hole in his fucking head. And one of them, I think, called the police or flagged the police down. And I think somehow the police, being misogynists, didn't really listen to the women, because by this point Dahmer had come back down and said, "Oh, he's my friend. We were just having some drinks. I think he's had a bit too much. I'll take him back up to my place." And then I think they just left him with him. So the police let that happen. I think this is what happened, if I'm correct.
I believe you are.
It's It's fucked up, man. It's so
It's
crazy.
fucked.
Like, yeah, it's just mental. So yeah, that's Jeffrey
Really
Dahmer.
weird, great.
There's still so
Jeffrey
much to him,
Dahmer.
but that's some
Aye.
key information there.
Yeah.
A lot of these serial killers will have like tons of information about them.
Yeah.
So when you're trying to like talk about them, trying to whittle it down to just the important facts and whatnot, it's so my first.
Oh, sorry. No, I just
On
found
you
it.
go.
No. Okay, it was basically just about that guy. So, yeah, the police arrived. The boy was incoherent, and they accepted the word of Dahmer, a white man in a largely poor African American community. So they were like, "Hey, a white man, he knows what he's doing."
Oh my god.
And the Dahmer said he was his 19-year-old lover, when in fact he was a 14-year-old boy. The police escorted Dahmer and the boy home, back to Dahmer's place, clearly not wishing to become embroiled in a homosexual domestic disturbance. They took only a cursory look around the flat before leaving. As after they left, Dahmer killed the boy and proceeded with his usual rituals. If they'd done even a basic search, they would have found another body in the flat at the time. But the police just believed everything he was saying, because he was such a well-spoken man. He managed to come across quite well. So, or no, he wasn't well spoken, but he managed to persuade and lie his way. So the police would leave, and it's fucking mental. Anyway.
So the first serial kill I'll mention is slightly similar in terms of being homosexual, and this is Dennis Nilsen. There's been a recent show made, I think literally this year, featuring David Tennant called Des, which I'll get round to. So the thing with Dennis Nilsen, he is a Scottish-born serial killer who lived in London during the time of the killings. I think he killed a total of like 12 young men, and he would dissect their bodies. Now, when he was young, his parents' marriage was it was very unhappy, and there was a lot of bickering and whatnot. So he ended up living with his maternal grandfather, and Nilsen adored him when he was growing up. But while he was growing up, his grandfather unexpectedly died when Dennis was about 6 years old. So on top of that, and the traumatizing experience of seeing his grandfather's corpse at the funeral, he had said himself led to his psychopath behavior. And yeah, he was very much aware of his homosexual attractions and just what he was into, but he very much wasn't happy with it. He was trying to shun it in a way, and it wasn't until 1978 that he killed this first person. But before that, he had done work. What was it? I think he went to the army. He went to the army in the early 70s. But he went to the army as a cook, which is where he ended up learning the skills that he later on used during his killings. And after he left the army, he took up police training, and this is where he discovered his fascination with morgue visits and autopsies and all that stuff. So I just started developing from there. And in 1978, he met his first young victim in a pub and invited him home. And he's had previous sexual encounters and every time like they leave, he just he's reinforced with like this loneliness, because after his grandfather left, he was very much like a lonely child, because his mother had like 4 other children and remarried, so he was never like the focal child. So he grew up very lonely. So anytime he had like a sexual encounter, they would leave, and he would just be overwhelmed by this loneliness. And in his first kill, then the next morning after it, he got overcome by this desire to prevent this young man from leaving. So he strangled him, and he tied him before he ended up drowning him in a bucket of water. And he ended up taking the corpse to the bathroom to wash it, and then later placed it back into his bed. And he remarked by saying he found the corpse beautiful, which is just fucked. He attempted to have sex with it, and I think he's done this for like most of his other kills. And he spent the night sleeping next to the dead man. And eventually he hid the corpse under his floorboards for months before eventually removing it and just burning the body in his back garden. And he would do this for like quite a lot of his kills. It was much the same. He would bring people home, kill them, and in many cases he would like chop up the bodies and do all sorts, and just casually burn remains in his back garden. And yeah, I think it was the 80s. Later on, he eventually moved to another house, but like to try and like stop himself. He moved into this top floor apartment somewhere else in London, so that he couldn't like they couldn't hide people under the floorboards, because the floorboards weren't quite like that. He had no back garden. So when he moved there, he still had the urge. And he ended up killing like another 3 or 4 people. And I'm pretty sure some of his kills, he would like boil the heads. He would take off their heads and boil it, and then it's some of the stuff that he would do like with the bodies is just horrific. I think like his second kill, he would hide under the floorboards like he used to, and then he would just take it out and have conversations with it as if he was still alive, which is very fucked. But yeah, it wasn't until 1983 that he was caught. And when he was caught, and like they investigated his apartment, and they found, because I think, what was it? Someone else who lived in one of the other apartments was complaining about like this blockage in the drains, because he would try and like stomp some of the remains down. And when it got investigated, they found these body parts. So eventually, it led to his apartment being fully inspected, and they found parts and whatnot. And he just admitted to it. He said, "Yeah, it's whatnot." Explained the whole thing. So, it's just very fucked.
Was this Dennis Nilsson, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's mad.
Dennis Nilsson.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was me. I did that.
A lot of serial killers end up just confessing.
They do.
That's
Once they're in a
it, yeah.
position where like there's no way out, they're just like, yeah, it was me. I'm fucked in the head.
It's because that's the thing with serial killers. They're not so much like they're choosing to do it as it's an asphyxiation. It's like a mental condition they're going through. Like they
Yeah.
have the urge to kill. A lot of the time they don't want to act. They don't have a moral compass, or they know it's wrong but they can't help it.
He tried to stop himself by moving, but it just kept going.
Really weird.
So yeah.
Probably why it's so interesting to talk about these sort of things. It's because it's just a psychological factor. But Yeah, I heard about that. David Tennant.
Yeah, I
TV
think
series.
Shannon's parents have been watching it.
Mm.
Yeah. It just looks, yeah. Apparently, David
Interesting.
Tennant's doing a really good job of coming across
Yeah.
as Dennis. So
He looks like him as well, which is creepy.
that's mad.
Uh,
Trying to stomp some remains down the drain. That's just.
Aye, yeah.
I
Yeah.
suppose should give my first example of
Go for it.
Yes.
the Zodiac Killer. Name
Yes.
is not given, as I will tell later why the name is not given. Is a serial killer that started his killings, or maybe hers, who knows, but in its killings in the late 60s to the early 1970s. And the whole deal with him being the Zodiac Killer is that you would send encrypted letters to San Francisco Bay Area press, and he would in these letters he would have like an English section, I believe, that would tell them, I want you to print that, that, and that, and that. But I also believe there was encrypted sections for hints of future stuff and later stuff. And there was 4 of these letters, and only one was completely decrypted, even till now, which is mad to think about. It's just it goes to show how intelligent this serial killer is. Overall, he apparently has had 37 victims. The 5 known victims so far were murdered in Benicia, Vallejo, Napa County, and San Francisco between 1968 and 1969. A lot of them were couples, and funnily enough, of the couples, 2 men survived. I believe the first case that we find out, the male of the couple survived, and then another case at another lake. I believe he had a knife out which he tied the couple up, and he stabbed the back of the man, thinking
Jesus.
it was going to kill him, and then he stabbed the back of the woman. She turned and she got stabbed inside in the belly as well because she was trying to move, and that fully killed her. But the man himself somehow lived. To be fair, it was probably, I think it was about 4 stabs to his back. It just didn't kill him, and I think it did leave him crippled in a general way. You would use a cane in that, and the first one was the first one that did live. The teenage boy years later helped contributed to trying to identify what the guy would look like, because they had a bunch of suspects years later. I think it was a good near enough 15 years later. But the whole deal with it is so many of these letters that are being sent through were saying he was going to target a bus full of kids, and that as they were hopping out the bus, as he made the bus crash, he would shoot each of them with his assault rifle. This never happened. It was just a weird thing he would go on about. He would call a lot of his victims' families and victims themselves while just heavily breathing on the mic, one of which was somebody who was trying to investigate him and did columns on him. We come down the line later, find out there's a guy known as, I think his name's Lee. It is Arthur Lee Allen, and a lot of evidence was showing as him being the serial killer, because as of Robert Graysmith's book, it was saying that he was a potential suspect based on circumstantial evidence. He had been interviewed by the police from the early days of Zodiac investigations and was the subject of several search warrants over a 20-year period. A lot of the time, thoughts were at the scenes that the killings were happening at, gloves were being left, certain things were being left, like bloodied, cut off shirts, scrappings, and sort of stuff like that. Apparently, Lee had been reported in the vicinity of the Lake Berryessa attack against Hartnell and Shepard, I think the first killings. He had given himself I believe, an alibi of scuba diving at Salt Point on the day of the attacks. His friend tried to cover up his general idea of where he was during those days, but honestly it didn't come to light properly. And eventually got to the point that so much circumstantial evidence was piling up over the years that when they finally thought they had sufficient evidence to, lock him up, he had a heart attack during that week and he died. So even though there were so many, multiple varying evidence points, including fingerprints, handwriting, and all that, because the Zodiac Killer would use his handwriting, that had special lettering that came from a theatre also where Leigh would come from. So even now, even though that Leigh was the biggest suspect, we don't know if it's actually him, because Zodiac Killer was so smart he could have fabricated this whole suspect list. We don't know, because it's just so convoluted, complicated, and the coincidence of Leigh dying in the week that he was going to be arrested is very, very off-putting. He should still be cutting about today, or he could have died years ago.
We don't know, and we probably won't know for a good while.
Yeah.
If we ever do.
More and more tests are being done even now today. That's the thing. He didn't kill an awful lot of people confirmed wise, so they just didn't take as much to it. They didn't think as important as a lot of other killers who were going at it. He was just too difficult to try and figure out a lot of the time. There was a lot of dedicated detectives and inspectors. But
it's a great one. And shout out to the film Zodiac.
Oh, why?
Which we watched very recently.
Mm-hmm. Very good film.
I have
long film.
I saw it's on. I think somebody else recommended it to me. It's on Netflix, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Zodiac. Let's see.
2.5 hours, I believe.
Yeah.
Worth it.
All right. Okay.
Jake Gyllenhaal is quality.
Robert Downey Jr.
Also.
Mark Ruffalo.
Heavy hitters for the serial killer pick.
Yep.
Even now, even though it's a movie of 2007, it looks like it just came out recently.
I'm seeing some screenshots of it.
It's got a lot of good direction. Direction and filmography in it. It's really good.
Yeah, I'll definitely have to check that. All right, next one up is So here we have the son of Sam, also known as David Berkowitz. American again. America's good for several things, and one of them seems to be serial killers. So he was active, or serial killing active, between 1976 and 1977 in New York. He was known as Son of Sam, and he was arrested on August 10th, 1977. So he was born to an impoverished Jewish mother in 1953 in Brooklyn. He was adopted by Jewish American hardware store retailers Nathan and Pearl when he was just days old. So his birth mother either couldn't take care of him or didn't want to take care of him. So that, for him to find that out later on, who his true parents were, kind of drove him a bit mad, and he held a bit of resentment against that. But so Nathan and Pearl Berkowitz, the adoptive parents, loved him, thought he was a fantastic child. He was reportedly a smart child, but was troubled in his own way. He was rather close to Pearl. It seemed that they had a good bond. He had a very difficult time as a teenager coping with her death. She unfortunately died quite early in his life. So to be so close with her and then her to pass so soon, for him, he found it really hard. And at the age of 18, he decided to enlist in the US Army. And he served in South Korea, where he excelled as a proficient marksman. He there was clearly some some great skill there as like from him. So yeah, they saw quite good things with him. So he finished his military service in 1974. So when was that? So he was 21 at the time. So he served for 3 years. He was 21 at the time. He returned to New York, where he got a job as a letter sorter for the U.S. Postal Service, and he settled into an apartment in Yonkers, which just sounds like a made-up place. Neighbors and co-workers described him as a loner who kept to himself. However, July 29th, 1976, what's that make him, 23? 23 years old. He began his killing rampage, starting with two teenage girls, Jody Valenti and Donna Laurie, in the Bronx. They were sitting in Valenti's car in front of Loria's Donna Loria? Yeah, whatever. Loria's home, when Berkowitz shot at them, killing Loria and injuring Valenti. A few months later, Berkowitz was at it again, spotting a couple in yet another parked car. He fired at them, resulting in a massive injury to the man's skull. So already police at the time, they'd seen the second incident, and at that point they hadn't really thought it was the same person. They were just thinking, oh, another random attack. And what made it so difficult is that that's what it was. It was random attacks. He was there was no connection to him in any way, so he was clear in that aspect. So if the police were questioning any of the victim's family and friends, he was completely unknown to them. So that's what made his reign, as it were, quite proficient, because he got away with it quite well. Mm-hmm. In November of 1976, he shot at two teen girls walking home together and left one of them paraplegic. Police around this time had yet to put these shooting incidents together to realize they were related. All that changed in January the following year, when he attacked another couple in a parked car. This is now starting to put together a clear type of attack. So they were in a parked car, approaching Christine Frund and her fiancé. Berkowitz shot twice, striking Frund's head, which later proved to be fatal. And because Berkowitz was using the same .44 or 44 caliber gun in all of his shootings, the police were on his trail, initially referring to him as the .44 caliber killer, which later evolved to the Son of Sam moniker. So, that March, so only the 2 months later, Berkowitz murdered college student Virginia Voskarichian, or however you say her name, rest in peace, as she was walking home from class. And then the next month, he's rattling them out almost once a month. He was really quite
on it.
Quite on it. There was no time for him to really chill. He wanted to get the next victim. So the next month, Berkowitz claimed another couple, Valentina Suriana and Alexander Esau, in their car, but this time he left a letter nearby addressed to the NYPD captain, Joseph Borelli, calling himself the Son of Sam, because he didn't like to be called the 44 caliber killer. Yeah. This is the first time the police had any form of communication with the killer. So it was big news at that moment. Throughout his murderous streak, Berkowitz left numerous letters near his victims' bodies, taunting the police and eluding their capture. As a result, the media coverage of his crimes was widespread, and Berkowitz relished the spotlight. All the while, New Yorkers lived in fear of being his next victim. Now, the police early on, didn't want to cause panic and say, yep, he's going after this particular female or whatever. But at that point, word was getting out and it was just getting a bit much. Berkowitz's final hit happened in the early hours of July 31st, 1977, 1 year since he started, roughly. He shot Stacy Moskowitz and Bobby Violante. Moskowitz later died, and Violante was blinded in one eye and lost most of his vision in the other from his injuries. So Sam, son of Sam Berkowitz, didn't stick around to make sure he was killing them. He relished the fact that he was killing or injuring them. He didn't want to hang around and make sure they were fully dead. Fortunately for the police, a witness noticed something at the scene that helped in cracking the case. He was arrested later that year, or quite shortly in that year, and he was locked up, and he got caught. Unlike the Zodiac, who we'll never know.
Yeah.
But it goes into some detail on
Yeah.
particular like health issues and specifics on why he did it. But he was, in the span of a year, in the span of a year, he started off and then he just got a bit quicker and quicker and quicker on his kills. He just wanted to get them out. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Just his loss just grew.
Yeah, it just grew, and then he was like, "No, I don't want to be called 44 caliber killer," and then he was like, "I will be called Son of Sam," and yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
The one keynote is that during questioning, Berkowitz explained that he had been commanded to kill by his neighbor Sam Carr, who sent messages to Berkowitz through his dog, a demon-possessed Labrador Retriever named Harvey. Due to this outrageous claim, Berkowitz underwent numerous psychological evaluations, but he was declared competent to stand trial. So yeah, that's the keynote there, is that he believed
Harvey
he
the
was being
dog.
commanded by this demon-possessed dog. So
Wow.
Well,
Yeah, well, that's something. Suppose I'll move us on to my second.
Go for it.
Now this is Herman Webster Mudgett, also known as H.H. Holmes. I don't know if either of you have heard of him. I assume so, but he's essentially the owner of this murder castle, as he called it. But although it's known more as like this it's like hotel with like quite a few stories, and this happened way back in like roughly 1893, as one of the dates said. It's roughly about then, and the thing about this is back then there wasn't like any like good ways to try and figure out, like in terms of like fingerprints and stuff like that. A lot of the ways to try and catch bad guys was
red-handed.
yeah. So before I say like all the stuff about him, I'll say he didn't actually get caught for killing for the kills. He actually got caught because of fraud. So he got caught with fraud, and then they investigated more. So yeah, he owned this place, which, if I remember correctly, the bottom floor was like this sort of like store, right, and the second floor was like a hotel with tons of rooms. And what he would do is he would hire people to work in his store, and then they could stay over in the upstairs rooms. And there's the numbers of it being like up to 200 victims, but a lot of people just speculate that that's just an inflated number and it's a lot lower. But yeah, in the second floor, and he was also building on the third floor more rooms, and all these rooms were just filled with like traps, and just each room was a different way on how to kill someone. He was like obsessed with this, and yeah, he would what he would do. He would hire people into the lower, get them to stay in the upper flats, the upper rooms, and once he killed them, he would send them down. He would send parts of their bodies like down the chute, that went like all the way down to like the basement somewhere, and he would, once they died, because they worked for him, he would claim on the life insurance, so that he could get money off of this. He would get money for people dying, and the fact that for quite a while they didn't click on to, hang on, why is so many people dying in this place? But yeah, he would kill these people and like just claim the life insurance, and that's what he got caught on. He got caught on the life insurance thing because it was much easier to get away with that sort of thing back then than it is now. Obviously, to fake shit like that, it's just way different. But yeah, that's the main premise of his killings. I don't know if you know much more, if you want to chime in with anything, or if that's
I just
much.
know
But
that a lot of the trash chutes were specifically made so he could just grab the body out of the room that he's just killed sometimes if he does it like first hand.
yeah,
And just drags them to the trash chute in a bag and just drops it down because
mm-hmm.
they're lubricated to just make the body fall all the way down to the basement.
I know that, or at least I believe, in American Horror Story, one of the stories they spoke about, there was a particular part of it. I think it was American Horror Story Hotel. Marsh, I can't remember his first name, but the owner of the hotel, I believe, is based off of the likeness, or based off of the personality and story of H.H. Holmes, because the hotel was a death trap.
Pretty much.
Yeah. What's his name?
fucking-
James Marsh.
So-
American Horror Story. There you go. Yes.
It's a mad one.
One of the most efficient killers if it is really up in the hundreds.
Yeah.
Well,
Claiming on their life insurance.
well, my second one is Edmund Kemp. No, not Edmund. Ed Kemper. I think his full name is Edmund or Edward. I can't mind, but he is known as the.
I think it's a.
Yeah, I think he was known as the co-ed killer before he confessed to his killings. He's one of the few that confessed. He didn't get caught or arrested, or like he did something. He just full on confessed. But it began with him being young, he had an abusive sex working mother. He eventually went to go live with his grandparents, of which he got into a argument with one time. He's over, I think it was killing birds with guns. So he decided, well, you know what? I think quoting it or paraphrasing it, he says, "I just felt like it," and he shot his grandmother in the head, I believe. To
Jesus
which
Christ.
he waited for the grandfather to come home, and as he heard the car rolling up, waited for him to get out of the car, went out into the front garden, shot him, and they were just both dead. I believe he got caught, or something happened, and he was put into a youth juvenile facility, in which he was kept there until he was 21, I believe. And they deemed him readily able to leave after therapy and multiple other medical things. So after he was released, he got police training, much like Des, He learned a few other things. One of the physical traits he was known for was that he was 6'9", 6'9", and he had an incredibly high IQ that they determined when he was in the juvenile facility. And that he started picking up young girls, or hitchhikers, that is, young girl hitchhikers, and he wouldn't do anything to them. He would just pick them up because he had control over doing that and drop them back off. But eventually, he decided, I'm going to start killing these women, and he did, and that's how the whole co-ed thing started going about. And I believe the state he was in, I can't mind the name of the state, but the state he was in was also had 2 other current serial killers during his time. So the state was just deemed like the big bad. And Ed Kemper had eventually had an argument with his mother as well. Surprisingly enough, the whole point of him going to his grandparents is because his mother was abusive, and that's how he got so angry to begin with. But after he got released from the juvenile place at age 21, he got put back with his mother again, and I'm just like, I'm sorry, but I don't think you should be sticking the killer back with abusive people. But alas, he decapitated his mother after shooting her. I believe he performed fellatio with her head. He then invited the mother's friend to come over, to which I think she came in and he either hit her on the head or strangled her to death there. A lot of his victims, he would cut their heads off and just like put their limbs and that in the ocean. They would end up being washed up eventually and found. He'd put like heads in the back garden of his mother's place, or some woods. With the killing of his mother and the friend, he tried to go away and pack stuff, but then just decided, you know what, no, I'm confessing. Went to a telephone box, called in. Nobody believed him. Nobody wanted to believe him until he took them back to the place, explained all the evidence, like thoroughly explained all the evidence. This is how I did it. That's what I did, and they just took him in, and he got put on trial. But the thing is, the judge asked him this specifically, and it was interesting. What do you think your sentence should be? It was very odd of a judge to do, and Ed Kemper just replied, "I think I should be tortured heavily to death." But he wasn't. Well, obviously he wasn't. He was given 9 life sentences, and he's still alive today.
Fucking hell.
I think it was the 70s or the 80s that he was the co-ed killer, that he confessed. And he's just still alive today. And a lot of the interviews that he was under, he was just known to be a very intelligent man. And he spoke to people, and he just thinks that all serial killers should be dealt with. And he knows what he did was wrong, and hence why he confessed. And he doesn't think he'd ever stop if he didn't confess, sort of stuff.
Yeah.
The other thing that I found interesting about Ed Kemper is one of his kills. He had a young girl in his car. And he said, he basically stopped the car, turned to her and said, "I'm going to kill you. Are you going to get out of the car?" And apparently just based on what he told the interviewers, she didn't leave the car because she was that manipulated by him. And he just proceeded to strangle her to death in the car.
Jesus Christ. So he was like, this is what I'm going to do. Are you going to get out? And she didn't. So he's like, cool.
Yep.
Jesus.
He was a really well-spoken man, apparently. He's just mental. He's 6'9", 300 pounds. Very intelligent. It was just a really odd case.
It's like, he called and was like, I did it. And they're like, no, I didn't.
And then he was like, no, I'll show you. And you're like, okay.
They're just like, nah,
well,
nah,
we know you, Ed. You wouldn't do that. It's like, well, I killed 2 people before, so... It's like, is it that hard to believe?
That's so mad.
Just casually.
Yeah. That's so mad. Anywho, moving on to my last guy.
Yeah.
I have the very famous, infamous, popular, not so popular, Ted Bundy.
Good old Ted Bundy.
Serial killer and rapist.
Bad
not good old, bad old Ted
Bad
Bundy.
old Ted Bundy.
He is, or was, one of the most notorious criminals of the late 20th century.
Definitely.
He early life. Eleanor Louise Cowell, who went by Louise, she was 22 years old and unmarried when she gave birth to her son Ted. At that time, to be an unwed female with a child, no. Social norms, no, thank you. That's not right. So she immediately Ted started off his life in not the best of circumstances. Ted's father may have been Lloyd Marshall, an Air Force veteran and a Penn State graduate, according to Anne Rule, a co-worker of Ted's and the author of the book The Stranger Beside Me. Other sources had Ted's father's name as Jack Worthington, while some rumors had it that his father was also his grandfather. Because Ted's birth certificate lists his father as unknown, his biological father's identity may never be confirmed. So, yeah, again, starting off life not so well.
Yeah.
In 1951, Louise, his birth mother, married Johnny Bundy. While Ted took his name, he reportedly didn't have much respect for his stepfather, whom he resented for being too uneducated and working class. So that just shows right there that Ted Bundy thought himself more than average, and when he came across someone coming into his family, he came across this person who he believed was uneducated and too working class. He already had a distaste for. Johnny and Louise had several children together. Louise was working as a secretary at the University of Puget Sound, and still married to Johnny in the 1970s when Ted was accused of his crimes. She refused to believe the charges for years, although she changed her stance after he confessed. So clearly she thought, no, he's my child. He's a great guy. He would never do this. But after he confessed, she's like, God damn, he did. He was born in 1946. His life started as his mother's secret shame. Because, like it says in the 40s, to be an unwed mother and have a child, it was like, wow, what are you doing with your life? Get a man. So to hide the fact that he was an illegitimate child, Ted was raised as the adopted son of his grandparents and was told that his mother was his sister, which is crazy. Eleanor moved with Ted to Tacoma, Washington a few years later and soon married Johnny. From all appearances, Bundy grew up in a content working-class family. He showed an unusual interest in the macabre at an early age. Around the age of 3, he became fascinated by knives. A shy but bright child, Ted did well in school, but not with his peers. As a teenager, a darker side of his character started to emerge. Bundy liked to peer in other people's windows and thought nothing of stealing things he wanted from other people. He graduated the University of Washington with a degree in psychology. He had been accepted to the law school in Utah, although he would never earn that degree. And while he was a student at the University of Washington, Bundy fell in love with a wealthy, pretty young woman from California. She had everything he wanted: money, class, and influence. He was devastated by their breakup, and many of Bundy's later victims resembled his college girlfriend, attractive students with long, dark hair. I'm sorry, I'm burping while I'm saying this. By the mid-70s, Bundy had transformed himself, becoming more outwardly confident and active in social and political matters. He even got a letter of recommendation from the Republican governor of Washington after working on his campaign. So early life started off not too great, but he instead became a well-presented person. He became very social. He was more confident and active in political matters. And even the Republican governor of Washington was like, damn, this guy's pretty cool. Yeah. So yeah, it's to go from not a great start of life, and then he was like, no, I'm going to make something of myself. I'm better than that, and then he started to kill. He confessed in total to 36 young women across several states in the 70s, but experts believe that the final tally may be closer to 100 or more. The exact number will never be known. His killings usually followed a gruesome pattern, and he often raped his victims before beating them to death. While there is some debate as to when Bundy started killing, most sources say that he began his murderous rampage around 74. Around this time, many women in the Seattle area and in nearby Oregon went missing. Stories circulated about some of the victims last being seen in the company of a young, dark-haired man known as Ted. He often lured his victims into his car by pretending to be injured and asking for help, and their kindness proved to be a fatal mistake. When he was being convicted of these crimes, and it was all starting to come to light that he had done these killings, so many people refused to believe it. He was a very well-dressed, very, at the time, by their standards, very handsome gentleman, and people just couldn't believe someone like that would commit such crimes like this. So there was a lot of support for him to not be arrested. He escaped from prison twice in 1977. The first time he was indicted on murder charges for the death of a young Colorado woman and decided to act as his own lawyer in the case. This has been slightly disputed because some people say that he did get legal counsel at some point, but yes, he did act as his own lawyer. During a trip to the courthouse library, he jumped out of a window and made his first escape. He was captured 8 days later. Then December, he escaped from custody again. He climbed out of a hole he made in the ceiling of his cell, having dropped more than 30 pounds to fit through the small opening. And authorities did not discover that Bundy was missing for 15 hours, giving the serial killer a massive head start on the police.
Oh, yeah.
After his second escape from prison, he eventually made his way to Tallahassee, Florida, and on the night of January 14th, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University, attacking 4 of the young female residents, killing 2 of them. On February 9th, he kidnapped and murdered a 12-year-old girl named Kimberly Leach, and these crimes marked the end of his murderous rampage as he was soon pulled over by the police that February. The most damning evidence connecting Bundy to the 2 Chi Omega murders at Florida State University were bite marks on one of the bodies, which were a definite match to Bundy. So he admitted to killing 36 women. He loved knives since an early age. He had a psychology degree, and he even decapitated 12 of his victims. He is a gruesome being. And like I said, he's a very handsome gentleman at the time. He was very well spoken, and people just couldn't believe such a person could be such a monster. And it's just crazy.
Yeah.
I think he inspired American Psycho's character.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think so.
And Dennis from Always Sunny.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, American Psycho being this well-read businessman has such dark, gruesome thoughts, and it's like you just don't know who is underneath the face. Yeah. So yeah, he had good looks, charm, and intelligence.
I do think the most interesting thing about Ted Bundy is that he worked for a suicide hotline, and he did help prevent a lot of suicides.
That's kind of mental. I didn't come across that in my
And
research.
I think another one was he helped with a lot of cases with serial killers.
Oh, yeah. Well, obviously he would have been able to, because he would have been like, well, how would I do it? Oh, that's mental. Like, so, yeah.
Oh,
Just
man.
crazy.
And there's so much more about him, but I'll leave it for
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Go on then, Dylan.
Aye. So, my last serial killer is also a known one from 1888. I think all the killings happened. It's about 5 kills, I think, roughly. And it's Jack the Ripper.
Yes.
Now, yeah, part of the reason why he's called Jack the Ripper is because he was never caught. They never actually identified who this was, but he killed at least 5 women and mutilated their bodies in like a very unusual manner, which definitely indicated that this killer had a fair bit of knowledge on the human anatomy. Human anatomy. All 5 killings attributed to Jack the Ripper took place within a mile of each other, which was roughly near this Whitechapel district of London's East End during the time of 1888, roughly between August the 7th and September 10th. And yeah, several other murders like about that time have also been investigated as like the work of Leather Apron, which is another nickname that was given to this murder. And what's quite interesting about this is a number of letters were apparently sent from the killer to the London Police Service, which was known as Scotland Yard, I'm pretty sure. And it just taunted the officers about his gruesome kills, his gruesome activities, and sort of speculated on all the murders that were to come. Which it's the letters that also spawned the name Jack the Ripper. Now, like some of them speculated that it could have been a hoax, like the letters. But some of them do believe that this is this person. It was never like said what his actual name was or what his motives were.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that's still up in the air, and I think there was over 100 suspects named during the entire like investigation, and this is way back as well. It's nobody really knows. Some of the suspects included people like a famous Victorian painter known as Walter Sickert, a Polish migrant, and even the grandson of Queen Victoria. But yeah, besides that, it just wasn't captured, wasn't found. Still don't know who Jack the Ripper is. That's as much as I have to say on this.
Definitely been a lot of fictional stories as well from what I've read.
Yeah, it did start a lot of
that. One thing I do know or discovered about Jack the Ripper, I think this is a documentary or something about him years ago. In one of the letters, in one of the letters, where it's signed Jack the Ripper, they've analyzed the type of handwriting, and at one part of that Jack the Ripper, it's as if he's taken the pen off of the page, kind of forgotten what he was going to write, and then continued writing it. because they can tell by the way the penmanship is
Yeah.
that it looks like it was either Jack the Ripper or it was someone else pretending to be Jack the Ripper. So it was like at the time, other things were going on, and like like you says, it's all up in the air. They just don't know who this person was, and it's the amount of evidence, and yet so little, and yet what?
That's the thing. The older the era that these serial killers were about, the less ability that the authorities have to actually tracking down who it is. It really does like deter finding who the killer is. Like now, it's incredibly tough to be a serial killer.
Yeah.
I mean, it will still happen, and there's incredibly intelligent people can find ways to go about it. But like back in the day, you didn't have a lot of digital certificates. You didn't have a lot of cameras or that. It's just, oof. But to finish this off, I will briefly talk about. I believe this man's name is Pedro Lopez, and he is a serial killer that has about over 211 confirmed kills, I believe.
Jesus.
And I think the weirdest part of the story is, I'll say at the end, but to begin with, he was arrested for, I think, car fraud, and he was brutally gang raped in prison, which obviously mentally affected him. But he decided to remember who was all part of the group that had raped him, and went out and murdered them. And when he was released, he started his killing spree, and he was eventually caught, and he was put in prison again, and he served his sentence of 14 years after a multitude of killings. And he's released, and he's just cutting about now, and nobody knows where he is or if he's still alive. And all we know is that he has hundreds of kills. And it's just pretty brutal.
That's ridiculous. That's more serial killers probably than my 3 put together.
It's just mad. Like, he served 14 years after so many kills, and then was just released like that.
That's
cared.
ridiculous.
I don't understand how there's so many grievous crimes like committed by these certain people, and they somehow manage to leave prison. It's just mad. And that's why I chose Pedro Lopez, because it's just a bizarre case of he's a murderer and he's just somehow currently free. We don't even know where he is. He's probably still alive.
He's probably still getting away with murders.
Yeah.
Good chance, yeah.
You could be in your very house. Whoa.
Look behind you.
But with that, I believe that wraps us up on that topic. And the podcast in its entirety.
Yeah, man.
That's the episode.
Is this usually how long they go?
No.
I think this is the longest.
I think the shortest is about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and the last longest one was like 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Nice.
But this has been a very enjoyable episode.
Yeah.
And
as expected, special episodes last a bit longer.
I'm very much pleased that you've came on and joined us.
That's no bother at all.
You've been a great guest, James. Thank you very much.
Marvelous.
Hope you enjoyed it yourself.
Oh yes, yeah. Just hearing all this stuff is just I love Halloween time and creepiness and yeah, it's good. It's good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Well, if you're listening to this on Halloween Day, we wish you a happy Halloween.
Yes.
Until next time, I guess.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye.